Más de 1 millón de inmigrantes ilegales se han autodeportado desde que Trump llegó a la Casa Blanca. Ahora el gobierno advierte que el origen de quienes entran ilegalmente define el futuro de Estados Unidos. Mientras tanto, el caso de Jeffrey Epstein vuelve a encender la polémica. El presidente Trump ordena revelar las transcripciones del gran jurado, buscando exponer lo que él llama una estafa de los demócratas. Soy Pachi Valencia y le doy todos los detalles en Desde el Capitolio. Buenas noches, soy Pachi Valencia. Bienvenidos a Desde el Capitolio, en directo desde Washington, D.C. Más de 1 millón de inmigrantes ilegales se han autodeportado desde que el presidente Donald Trump asumió el cargo. Esto según Stephen Miller, asesor de seguridad nacional de la Casa Blanca. Él dijo que se estima que este número está basado en los datos de la fuerza laboral. Durante una entrevista con Fox News este miércoles, Miller dijo que si los inmigrantes ilegales entienden las consecuencias de quedarse en el país frente a la oportunidad de autodeportarse, que entonces habrían millones más de autodeportaciones. Miller además enfatizó algunas de las consecuencias de quedarse como ilegal en este país, como por ejemplo enfrentar arrestos, enfrentar deportaciones repentinas, un posible embargo de sus ingresos o pérdidas de propiedades, entre otros más. El asesor volvió a resaltar que quienes elijan regresar a su país de origen tienen la oportunidad de regresar a Estados Unidos legalmente en un futuro y que también recibirán un cheque de $1,000 al irse. Y el Departamento de Seguridad Nacional ya había anunciado precisamente esto en junio, porque dijeron que mediante la aplicación CBP Home, los inmigrantes ilegales pueden controlar su salida y también recibir un apoyo financiero de $1,000 para que se autodeporten, además de que también se les perdonarían las multas. Ahora, en esta entrevista que tuvo Miller con Fox News, el asesor también entró más en detalle sobre la procedencia de estos inmigrantes ilegales. Él ha dicho de que era importante considerar que el país de origen de quienes están ilegalmente en Estados Unidos es importante porque, en sus palabras textuales, dijo que no era prudente traer gente de países en crisis como Haití o Somalia. También dijo que quien vive en tu país determina lo que es tu país, poniendo un ejemplo de que si trasladan el tercer mundo al primer mundo, refiriéndose a Estados Unidos, entonces con el tiempo Estados Unidos se convierte en el tercer mundo, y eso dijo él que no conviene a nadie que quiera vivir aquí en Estados Unidos en el futuro. ¿Y usted qué opina sobre las declaraciones del asesor de Trump? Los leo debajo en los comentarios. Pero antes de seguir, lo invito a dejar un like en este video para que nos siga apoyando con nuestra misión de reportar la verdad. Ahora, la postura de la Casa Blanca sobre el origen de los migrantes que llegaron ilegalmente al país también se ha visto reflejada en las acciones del gobierno de Trump en torno a las deportaciones. Por ejemplo, hace unos días el Departamento de Seguridad Nacional deportó a 5 inmigrantes ilegales, pero no los devolvió a sus países de origen, sino que los envió a un destino poco común, Esuatini, que es un pequeño reino en el sur de África, conocido por ser la última monarquía absoluta del continente. Pero ¿quiénes eran estos ilegales que fueron llevados a este país? Fueron ciudadanos de Cuba, Vietnam, Jamaica, Yemen y Laos. ¿Y por qué los deportaron? Porque tenían condenas por crímenes graves como asesinato, abuso de menores y delitos relacionados con pandillas. Pero aquí está el punto polémico. Sus países de origen se negaron a recibir a estos ilegales criminales. De hecho, el DHS los había calificado como excepcionalmente crueles. Entonces, bajo la política de países terceros seguros, Estados Unidos decidió enviarlos a Esuatini. Esta política fue impulsada durante el gobierno de Donald Trump y en junio de este año la Corte Suprema la avaló de manera definitiva. Ahora bien, ¿qué pasa con estas personas al llegar a Esuatini, que es un país de donde ellos no provienen? Pues el gobierno de este país los considera como personas en tránsito y asegura que va a buscar repatriarlos a los países de origen con ayuda de las Naciones Unidas. Este país también prometió ser un miembro responsable de la comunidad global y garantizar que se respeten los debidos procesos y los derechos humanos al tratar con estos deportados. Ahora pasamos a otro tema. Tras semanas de críticas y especulación, el presidente Donald Trump acaba de tomar una decisión que podría reabrir uno de los casos más controversiales, el caso de Jeffrey Epstein. En un posteo de Truth Social ayer jueves por la noche, el presidente Trump dijo que debido a la ridícula publicidad que se le ha dado a Jeffrey Epstein, le he pedido a la fiscal general Pam Bondi que presente todos los testimonios pertinentes ante el gran jurado sujeto a la aprobación del tribunal, y añadió: esta estafa perpetuada por los demócratas debe terminar ya. Apenas minutos después de este anuncio de Trump, Bondi dijo en X que estaban listos para mover al tribunal mañana para revelar las transcripciones del gran jurado. Epstein ha generado un intenso escrutinio durante años, especialmente luego de morir bajo custodia federal en 2019, mientras esperaba ser procesado por los cargos de conspiración de traficar sexualmente a menores. Ya en 2008 se había declarado culpable por primera vez en Florida por cargos de solicitar prostitución y conseguir el favor de una menor para la prostitución, y cumplió luego una condena de 13 meses en prisión. Y como reportamos en el episodio anterior, a inicios de julio el Departamento de Justicia había concluido que Epstein se había suicidado mientras estaba bajo custodia federal y que no tenía una lista de clientes, una afirmación que definitivamente causó mucha polémica entre ambos lados del partido político. Trump dijo a principios de esta semana que Bondi había manejado el caso de Epstein muy bien y pidió a sus partidarios que no desperdicien tiempo y energía en Epstein. Pero los leemos en los comentarios. Cuénteme, ¿cree que esta medida realmente ayudará a aclarar lo que pasó con el caso de Jeffrey Epstein? Los leo. Y un senador estadounidense quiere enviar un mensaje claro a Colombia. Durante nuestra cobertura de Turning Point USA en Tampa, conversamos con el senador Bernie Moreno, el primer senador en la historia de Estados Unidos nacido en América Latina. El senador Moreno nos comparte detalles de su próximo viaje a Colombia junto a una delegación bipartidista. También nos explica cómo ve la relación comercial entre ambos países y el impacto del One Big Beautiful Bill en Ohio. Esta fue mi conversación con el senador Bernie Moreno. Senator Bernie Moreno, thank you so much for joining Epoch Times Español. It's a pleasure to have you here.
No, it's an honor to be here.
So, Senator Moreno, can you tell us what's your upcoming trip to Colombia this August? And it's a bipartisan group that you're going with.
Yeah, I'm taking Senator Ruben Gallego, whose mother was born in Colombia, his father was born in Mexico. So we adopt him as a Colombian. I was born in Colombia myself, moved to the U.S. legally when I was a kid. So I'm the first United States Senator in American history that was born in Latin America. So we're going to start in Mexico, where they're going to go to El Salvador, Panama. We're going to spend more time in Colombia. As you know, in Colombia, there's a big election coming up. And it's really important to send a message that America wants a strong, very positive relationship with Colombia like we used to have. And that relationship, unfortunately, is deteriorated. We got to bring that relationship back up. America loves Colombia, loves Colombians, has very high respect for Colombians, and Colombia has the opportunity to be our greatest ally. We're going to take that message right to the people of Colombia so that we strengthen the bonds. And not just Colombia, but we want to strengthen the bonds between all of Latin America. The U.S. shares a lot culturally in common with Latin America, and so we want to have a Western Hemispheric alliance where we don't have reliance on any other part of the world. And unfortunately, what's happened is over decades, America hasn't spent a lot of time or attention in Latin America, and I'm going to change that.
What would you say will be the first, most urgent thing to repair, let's say, between this relationship?
We need to have a forward-looking president for Colombia. The people of Colombia, of course, are the decision makers there. They have an election coming up in May. It's got to be a free and fair election. We don't want any shenanigans in that election. And then we have to make certain that when that person takes office, that we are ready to engage not just on drug trafficking. Of course, that's an issue. By the way, the highest level of cocaine production in history right now in Colombia. So we got to deal with that issue. We got to deal with the issue of human trafficking. But beyond those two obvious concerns, we have to figure out how to tie economically Colombia and the U.S. in a stronger, more productive way. So we're bringing some American business leaders, American companies. We're going to talk to Colombian business leaders, the Colombian companies, to see how we can forge those bonds together of cooperation in a big and meaningful way.
So one would say, how come it's a bipartisan group that's coming? So how did you engage with Senator Rubén Gallego to go to Colombia and do this?
Yeah, so he's a new freshman senator, as am I. We get along really well. I mean, obviously we don't agree on a lot of issues of policy here in America, but we do agree with what I just said. We want a strong relationship with Latin America. It's very opportunistic for us to be able to reshore products from non-friendly countries like China. So open the door to companies to make more products in Latin America that can't be made here in the U.S. Of course, bring more to the U.S. So we want to bring as much as we can to America, but when there's opportunities, we want to be able to nearshore. And also, by the way, look to South America to solve some problems. For example, around energy, around critical minerals, where they can supply the U.S. And these are very friendly countries for America. Because again, we share these cultural bonds. It's very unique that in the world we have an entire hemisphere that's very similar culturally.
And you've been very outspoken about the fact that in recent days, the President Trump has given tariffs against Brazil, over 50% tariff, because of what was happening with the former President Jair Bolsonaro.
Yeah.
And you've actually cited a similar case in Colombia.
Yeah, look, the weaponization of our justice system by corrupt politicians is now in full vogue. I mean, look what happened with Joe Biden, raided Mar-a-Lago. They indicted him not once, not twice, not three times, but 4 times. Obviously, all of them fake. Now, that happened in America, where we have the best legal system on earth. And yet still, this lunatic Biden was able to weaponize the justice system here in America. What's happening in Brazil that doesn't have the same strength of a judicial system is happening by that government against their political opponent. So what President Trump is saying is that's going to end, that's going to stop. And if you don't, look, we don't have to give you access to the U.S. market. That's optional. We're not saying we're going to send F-35s or B-2 bombers there. We're just saying we're just not going to deal with you economically. And that's our right to do that. So that's what tariffs are saying, plus secondary tariffs. So anybody who deals with Brazil will also get tariffed. And obviously that would cripple the economy. And look, what we want isn't to destroy their economy. We just don't want them to weaponize their justice system. Unfortunately, in Colombia, you have a similar situation with Álvaro Uribe, who's being persecuted by a corrupt judicial system there. So we have to fix that to make sure Colombia doesn't go down that same dark road. Colombia should be our best, most reliable ally. It has been historically, and we can make that relationship strong again.
For the Hispanic audience, if you can let us know, what's the biggest advantage for the United States to have Colombia as a close ally?
Well, we have a lot of what they need, and they have a lot of what we need. They have critical minerals, they have coal, they have oil, coffee, great people, economic bonds, trading relationships. There's a lot of cultural exchange that can happen. The same thing with Peru and Ecuador and Paraguay, Uruguay, Argentina, Chile, Brazil. Look, we got to fix Venezuela. We can create a great situation where the tide raises all boats, and that's what we want, to create a Western Hemispheric alliance. That's the ultimate goal, but we have to get rid of corruption. That starts with not having a weaponized judicial system, a president that's looking out for that country, that's not trying to be some sort of social media celebrity, and that isn't somebody that's, quite frankly, addicted to drugs, somebody who's more rational. And I think the people of Colombia can see that bright future for them, and that's the message we're going to bring to them in August, so that they have an informed, fair election come May.
Senator Moreno, and I just want to very quickly touch on the One Big Beautiful Bill, because I know that in Ohio, actually, there were a lot of people that were concerned about whether Medicaid will be affected. But also in Ohio happened that the rural hospitals got also to benefit from the One Big Beautiful Bill. Can you explain to us?
I mean, Ohio won big in the case of Medicaid and rural hospitals in this bill. So nationally, it's a 20% increase in Medicaid funding. right? So you hear the Democrats and some mainstream media say that we slash Medicaid. You can't use the word slash when you're increasing spending by 20%. Now, it would have been 30%, but we got kicked off illegals off Medicaid. We put a work requirement of 4 hours a day, which could be work, school, or volunteering for able-bodied adults, and we reset the relationship with the states in the next 4 or 5 years. That's nationally. The Ohio picture is even brighter. We will have more Medicaid money coming into Ohio than any time in our history. So the people who need Medicaid in my state, the Medicaid is stronger than it's ever been. That message is really important. We also created a rural hospital fund because rural hospitals are just tough to operate. It's hard to operate a rural hospital. You don't have the same kind of occupancy that you need to be profitable. So we have this fund. The fund is too small. It needs to be bigger. It could have been bigger. Susan Collins, senator from Maine, put a bill out there to let the top tax rate of 37% expire and go to 39.6 for people making $25 million a year. That would have doubled the size of the rural hospital fund. Only 3 Democrats voted for that. 44 Democrats tanked that bill and did not vote for that. Do you think that media narrative exists anywhere? Do you hear that anywhere repeated on CNN or MSNBC? Is The View talking about the fact that 44 Democrats voted against taxing people 2.6% more who make $25 million a year? No, because it totally obliterates their messaging. So here's the summary. Record Medicaid funding. If you need Medicaid, it's there for you. We're strengthening it. We kicked off people who are taking advantage of the system, and we've given $7,500 directly into the pockets of working Americans, and we took it away from millionaires that were getting subsidized to buy luxury EVs.
Senator Moreno, how can Hispanic community in Ohio can get access to this information about what they actually are benefiting from in Spanish? Because sometimes the Hispanic community would like to get access about on these issues in Espanol.
Get your friends and neighbors to subscribe to Epoch Times and make sure that they're following this. Get rid of your subscription to the Cleveland Plain Dealer, burn the Columbus Dispatch and the Cincinnati Enquirer, and get your real information. Look, I have no problem with political disagreements. I think it's important. I think an important part of a democratic society is free exchange of ideas. But you can't lie. And the Democrats and the media, because they have no ideas and they're so wrong on policies. Because all we're doing is talking about common sense. They just take into lying. So a Democrat will say a lie, mainstream media just repeats it over and over again, and somebody who doesn't have the value of understanding what being able to read Epoch Times is all about just has misinformation. So go out there and, by the way, study it yourself. Read the bill. Follow me on social media at Bernie Moreno, right? We put out there facts. Everything that we talk about, it can be completely fact-checked. And what you'll find is that what I'm saying is exactly accurate. You fact-check the Democrats, they're all lies. They're all lies. They say we slash Medicaid. How do you slash? If you spend 20% more on clothes this month than you spent last month, did you slash your clothing budget? No, you're spending more. That's what we're doing. Stop lying to my Democrat colleagues. Stop lying to Americans. It's cruel. These are programs that people depend on, and when you give them that fear and anxiety, you're just being cruel. To do that for cheap political points, it's grotesque.
Senator Bernie Moreno, thank you so much for joining the Epoch Times Espanol. I hope this is not the last time we speak.
Of course, anytime.
Gracias por acompañarnos en este episodio de Desde el Capitolio. Recuerde seguirnos en todas nuestras redes sociales, darle me gusta a este video y dejar sus opiniones debajo. Y si aún no se ha suscrito a este canal, hágalo ahora y no olvide activar las notificaciones para estar siempre informado sobre lo que sucede en Washington, D.C. y cómo nos afecta a la comunidad hispana. Soy Pachi Valencia y nos vemos la próxima semana con más información desde el Capitolio. Buenas noches.